It's astrology day. So where shall we start? So I think before we actually make a post, we make the deep research post here. I want to actually get some context on the scope of astrology. Now I'm wondering if I should just do deep research for that. Can you give me the full comprehensive scope of astrology? Like, how crazy is that type of ask? And then in a separate one, I don't know if we could have two of these going at the same time. Could you give me a comprehensive view of the empirical foundations, justifications of astrology? I'm wondering if there's any empirical science that gives a grounded rationale towards some of the assertions it makes / implies. Now, I shouldn't hit that yet until we actually read through this. Whoa, define astrology and trace its historical evolution from ancient civilization like Babylon and Egypt to the Hellenistic period in modern day. Identify and explain the fundamental technical components of Western astrology. Okay. Geometric aspects between planets. Research and compare major non-Western astrological systems, focusing on Vedic astrology and Chinese astrology, highlighting differences like the tropical versus sidereal. Categorize the functional branches of astrology based on their application. Okay, individual character and destiny, world events and politics, answering specific questions, selecting auspicious times. So so first of all, when we ask this, I want this to, what's the way of going about this? To inspect. Actually, no, I don't want to make that. I was going to say inspect all these different facets of astrology, but I'm really just looking for the grounding. It doesn't matter which sect or version of astrology we're talking about. I just want to know if there is any practical takeaway that is grounded in empirical standards, empirical scientific standards. Okay. It doesn't matter which sect version of astrology. It doesn't matter whether we're talking, what were these? If we're talking about, we're talking natal, mundane, horary, electional, synastry, etc. Okay, I should put this here. And then analyze the philosophical distinction between traditional astrology, predictive, fatalistic, and modern psychological astrology. Okay, it doesn't matter if we're talking traditional, predictive, fatalistic, or what was this? Contemporary, modern? or modern psychological, archetypal, humanistic. Okay, detailing the divergence from astronomy, the lack of empirical evidence, and the psychological phenomena that explain beliefs such as the Barnum effect and confirmation bias, assess the current cultural and economic scope of astrology, including its role in media, technology, apps, and wellness trends. So I'm gonna let that go, and then we can consider how to go about this one. Doesn't matter if we're talking about any of these. I just want to know if there's any practical takeaway that is grounded in empirical scientific standards. I don't want a full survey of these different facets. I only want to go where the evidence is. That's what I'm going to say. Yo, astrology day. What's good, Darmadon? What's good, Onion Helmet? Oh, here we go. This is good. We need stuff while we're waiting for this research to happen. So yeah, the goal or the strategy right now I have is we've got one deep research that's going over the comprehensive scope of astrology. I just want to get a context of all the different areas of astrology, and then I want one deep research that is specifically focused on empirical science, empirical evidence, anything that justifies any practical takeaway related to astrology. And so I think with both of these in mind, we'll have a decent view of if there's anything that we really need to look into or include. Okay, so if I do this, will this operate, or can we only get one of these deep researches at a time? Very prominent Hindu and his thoughts about it. Okay. All right, Swami Vivekananda's quotes on astrology or Jyotisha. All right, here we go. Here's my plan to tackle this topic. Let me know if you need if you need to make changes. Search for meta-analyses and systematic reviews in peer-reviewed journals that have tested the predictable validity of astrology or the accuracy of natal charts. Investigate the specific case of the Mars effect proposed by this person, examining the initial statistical claims, subsequent independent replications, and the scientific consensus on the data handling and selection bias involved. Research the methodology and results of the 1985 double-blind study published in Nature, as well as the study on time twins, people born minutes apart, to see if rigorous testing confirmed any astrological hypotheses. Explore the scientific field of chronobiology and the season of birth effect to identify proven correlations between birth months and personality traits, mental health, for example, schizophrenia, or physiology, and differentiate these biological causes from astrological mechanisms. Find large-scale statistical studies using big data, for example, census records, marriage records, that analyze correlations between sun signs and real-world outcomes like divorce rates, career paths, or accident proneness to check for statistical significance beyond chance. Search for empirical psychological research explaining the perceived accuracy of astrology, specifically focusing on the Barnum effect, which I think this other one's going to cover. Confirmation bias and the role of self-attribution in consulting oracles. Synthesize the gathered evidence to conclude whether any empirical support exists for astrological mechanisms or if the grounded rationale is exclusively found in psychological effects and environmental biology. Is there anything that you all think I should include in there that we're missing here? Just Googling seems astrology didn't start in Hinduism, but they did it for 2 millennia. Nice. But yeah, when I think of astrology, I think of that top quote there. Are we talking about these top quotes? Where he seems to affirm that there is a there, that is hard to find, and the whole mess is not worth it. Oh my gosh. That's rough. All these ideas, such as astrology, although there may be a grain of truth in them, should be avoided. What the hell? Every Hindu knows that astrologers try to fix the caste of every boy or girl as soon as he or she is born. That is the real caste, the individuality, and Jyotisha, astrology, recognizes that. And we can only rise by giving it full sway again. This variety does not mean inequality nor any special privilege. Excessive attention to the minutiae of astrology is one of the superstitions which has hurt the Hindus very much. I have seen some astrologers who predicted wonderful things, but I have no reason to believe they predicted them only from the stars or anything of the sort. In many cases, it is simply mind reading. Sometimes wonderful predictions are made, but in many cases, it is errant trash. Jeez. So yeah, like we can speculate all day, but until we get the actual empirical science behind it, then we don't know for sure. But I mean, I guess we don't know for sure anyway. But we don't know whether or not we're allowed to know, like, act as if we know for sure right now that there isn't anything that we can use, you know. So I feel like people will keep this up in the air, as in there's a maybe here, but until we get the empirical science, we're not allowed to go with that view. We can have hypotheses, and we have to test those before we can start acting as if it's something that's actionable. Simply mind reading, you hear the sentiment in tarot to that it is psychic and extreme and external things or aids. External signs. Yeah, I mean, my like steel man intuitively to like a reading of any kind. Oh, external things or aids. I see. My intuition is that there are people that are really good at getting someone's personality based on very small bits of data. Like you just see them for a second, and you're coming up with this stuff. And perhaps when you're even saying stuff to them, the way that they're reacting is giving you more information as to where you can take this thing. And perhaps you're just like phenomenal at that. And I'd imagine that people are. And that would be like that would be my explanation for why someone could give like a reading that's effective. Of course, it's not like they know for sure. They're just giving their best intuition, and they're just attuned to that type of thing. All right, I think the Greeks first took astrology to India and took from the Hindus the science of astronomy. We will figure that one out. Oh, we already have it, so we'll do that once we're done these quotes. And carried it back with them from Europe, because in India you will find old altars made according to a certain geometrical plan, and certain things had to be done when the stars were in certain positions. Therefore, I think the Greeks gave the Hindus astrology, and the Hindus gave them astronomy. Wow. Man has wanted to look beyond, wanted to expand himself, and all that we call progress, evolution, has been always measured by that one search, the search for human destiny, the search for God. No study has taken so much of human energy, whether in times past or present, as the study of the soul, of God, and of human destiny. The present is determined by our past actions, and the future by the present. The Vedas give information on various subjects. They have come together and form one book. And in later times, when other subjects were separated from religion, when astronomy and astrology were taken out of religion, these subjects, being connected with the Vedas and being ancient, were considered very holy. There was a powerful dynasty in southern India. They made it a rule to take the horoscope of all the prominent men living from time to time, calculated from the time of their birth. In this way, they got a record of leading facts, predicted, and compared them afterwards with events as they happened. This was done for 1,000 years until they found certain agreements. These were generalized and recorded and made into a huge book. So you could say that is some sort of study. Unfortunately, this is somewhat of a convenience sample, so it's not going to be following all the best criteria of empirical science. And hopefully we would have this type of study reproduced. That's what we want. The dynasty died out, but the family of astrologers lived and had the book in their possession. It seems possible that this is how astrology came into existence. Okay. Are we ready? Okay, let's start this research now. Right, but we are entering a new space. Best to have open and broad mind. Right, absolutely. Yep. Yep. I think like two things are good when jumping into like an open space. One, just getting our intuitions and biases out on the table is effective because we actually identify them as biases, as opposed to just being pulled by them without knowing. And yeah, also we it's good to point out that we are trying to learn, regardless of whether that touches up on our biases or not. Yeah, sure, I think they do it based on the Vedas. Okay, so I need to know more about the Vedas, but we might actually get into that. So I think we'll be chilling. But yeah, I guess in that spirit, I should just say that I've never actually looked into this stuff. I've always been skeptical. I really wanted to make sure that we actually talked about this stuff when looking at our personal context, because I feel like we have a responsibility to do that. So it's the only thing that I want to have happen today is for us to learn to make sense of this stuff. I'm not looking for an outcome. I don't really. It's not like we have a story here in our personal context here. Like we just have a bunch of notes. There's no agenda I'm trying to push here. So whatever needs to be in there needs to be in there. I don't know much about astrology, but I don't know. I mean, just based on the little bit that it said it was going to generate, I don't know at all about astrology. So the celestial architecture, an exhaustive analysis of astrological systems, historical evolution, and contemporary application. All right, introduction, the enduring search for cosmic order, very akin to what we just read. Astrology, the study of the correlation between celestial movements and terrestrial events, stands as one of the most enduring and complex intellectual traditions in human history. Far from being a monolithic superstition, it represents a sophisticated multi-millennial effort to map the human experience onto the mathematical precision of the cosmos. For thousands of years, civilizations across Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, China, and Europe have developed intricate systems to interpret the sky not merely as a physical expanse, but as a semantic field rich with meaning. Today, this ancient discipline is experiencing a profound renaissance, evolving from a tool of statecraft and royal divination into a cornerstone of the modern wellness economy, with a global market valuation projected to surge from approximately $4 billion in 2024 to nearly $30 billion by 2033. Wow. The scope of astrology is vast, encompassing the fatalistic omen reading of ancient Babylon, the geometric rationality of Hellenistic Greece, the karmic precision of Vedic India, and the algorithmic personalization of Silicon Valley mobile applications. To understand astrology is to understand the history of astronomy, mathematics, psychology, and religion, as these fields were inextricably linked for the majority of human existence. This report provides a comprehensive expert-level examination level examination of the astrological discipline. It dissects the technical mechanics of the major world systems, Western, Vedic, and Chinese. Analyzes the philosophical schism between traditional determinism and modern psychological archetyping, and it also evaluates the sociological and economic drivers behind its current resurgence. All right. Sounds pretty comprehensive. I kind of gave my view earlier that if it is true or not, there is a lot of noise and better spiritual things to focus on. I feel the same about tarot, aliens. Ask about the I Ching. Yeah, and I guess just pointing out, like, we kind of talk about this in the epilogue of part 1, but the way that we have to operate is, regardless if there is something there or not, we can only operate on the evidence that we have and the speculations that we get from, I guess, these traditions. But it's when these two things come together, like when the science and the traditions come together, where we leverage the science to make more sense of the traditions, to test our hypotheses from these traditions. That's when we can actually leverage the stuff. So that's kind of gonna, like, the epilogue of this, of part 2, I think is going to be around, hey, there's a lot that's very difficult to test, and there's a lot of wisdom that is quite complex and difficult to test. So let's talk about those there, like in the epilogue, where we could say, okay, we still need, like, the jury is not closed on these matters. So it's certain aspects of, stoicism or, biblical teachings or whatever, we need. Maybe even astrology. We'll see. Of course, as it relates to identifying and pursuing our goals. So, all right, part 1, the historical foundations and transmission of celestial knowledge. The history of astrology is a narrative of cultural synthesis where the mathematical innovations of one civilization were continuously merged with the mythological frameworks of another. This evolution transformed astrology from a system of observing external omens affecting the king into a complex language of individual psychology and destiny. The Mesopotamian origins, so this goes way back, the celestial script. The earliest organized system of astrology emerged in the 2nd millennium BCE in Babylon, within the cradle of civilization. Unlike the personal horoscopy of the modern era, Babylonian astrology was fundamentally mundane, concerned with the welfare of the state, the king, and agricultural cycles. It operated within the context of divination, where the gods were believed to communicate their will through celestial phenomena. The intellectual bedrock of this period is the Enuma, Anu, Enlil, a massive compilation of planetary omens standardized by the 16th century BCE. Wow. That's a long time ago. This text established the precedent that specific celestial events, such as an eclipse or the appearance of Venus, correlated with specific terrestrial outcomes such as famine, war, or the death of a monarch. Babylonian observers were meticulous, and their need to track planetary movements led to the development of the first celestial coordinate system. By the end of the 5th century BCE, they had mathematically divided the ecliptic, the apparent path of the sun, into 12 equal segments of 30 degrees each. This abstraction separated the zodiacal signs from the physical constellations, creating the animal circle that forms the basis of Western astrology today. Okay. Pretty cool. So this took about 400 years, I guess, to come up with these patterns. The Egyptian contribution, time and the ascendant. While Babylon provided the zodiac and the planets, ancient Egypt contributed with the temporal precision required for the individual horoscope. Egyptian astrology was deeply intertwined with their solar calendar and the heliacal rising of Sirius, used to predict the Nile's flooding. Okay. Their most significant technical contribution was the system of decans, 36 groups of stars that rose consecutively on the horizon, marking the passage of time during the night. That's probably like decans. Following the conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great in 332 BCE, A period of intense cultural fusion known as the Hellenistic era began. Greek rationality merged with Babylonian data and Egyptian temporal concepts. The Egyptian focus on the rising Deccan. Let's just come up with this.
Deccan.
Oh. With the rising Deccan evolved into the concept of the horoscopos, the ascendant. Okay, didn't know that was the origin. The specific degree of the zodiac rising on the eastern horizon at the moment of birth. This point became the anchor of the natal chart, representing the individual's physical incarnation and distinguishing their destiny from others born on the same day. Okay. The Hellenistic synthesis and the Tetrabiblos. The codified system of Western astrology was born in Alexandria between the 2nd century BCE and the 2nd century CE. Hellenistic astrologers synthesized the inherited traditions with Stoic, Middle Platonic, and Neo-Pythagorean philosophy. They introduced a complex geometric structure to the chart, viewing the cosmos as a single living integrated whole, where the microcosm of the human soul reflected the macrocosm of the universe. The most influential figure of this era was Claudius Ptolemy, whose work Tetrabiblos attempted to strip astrology of its mystical trappings and present it as a natural science based on Aristotelian physics. Ptolemy, am I saying that? Is it Ptolemy? Is it Ptolemy? I feel like I should know this one. Ptolemus?
Ptolemy.
Ptolemy, okay. Ptolemy argued that planetary influence was physical, transmitted through heat, moisture, cold, and dryness, rather than divine intervention. Wow, Ptolemy coming in huge early on. This naturalistic justification allowed astrology to survive within academic circles well into the Middle Ages and Renaissance. Okay. Preservation and expansion, the Islamic Golden Age. With the decline of the Western Roman Empire, astrological knowledge was transferred to the Islamic world. During the Islamic Golden Age, scholars not only preserved Greek texts through translation, but also expanded the discipline with rigorous mathematical precision. They refined the calculation of planetary positions and introduced new techniques such as the lots, the Arabic parts, and sophisticated predictive cycles involving the great conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn. These texts were later retranslated into Latin in the 12th century, reintroducing high astrology to medieval Europe. Wow. All right, so then the Renaissance and the scientific divergence. By the Renaissance, astrology had a prestigious position in European courts and universities. It was considered a sister science to astronomy. Indeed, the two were often indistinguishable. Figures like John Dee, the court astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I, exemplified the Renaissance magus, a scholar who combined mathematics, cryptography, astronomy, and astrology. Dee's work was practically applied to matters of state. He famously elected the date for Elizabeth's coronation to ensure a stable reign, utilizing electional astrology to mitigate the political precarity of the time. Wow, precarity. Is this just like danger? The state of being precarious or uncertain. I see. However, the 17th century marked the Great Divergence, as the heliocentric model of the solar system gained acceptance and Newtonian physics provided a new mechanical explanation for the universe. The Aristotelian physics that underpinned Ptolemy's astrology collapsed. Astronomy focused on the physical properties of celestial bodies, while astrology remained focused on their symbolic meaning. By the Age of Enlightenment, astrology was expelled from the university curriculum, surviving largely through almanacs and secret societies until its psychological revival in the 20th century. Wow. So yeah, like what I would, I mean, this all makes sense so far as like as the trajectory. Like it's harder to see patterns like this without a clear reasoning. However, if you did have, some sort of uh, study, you looked at patterns over a long period of time, like you could still have something there, and it would just be difficult to express that come the enlightenment time. Like for the enlightenment time, like you want the immediate logic to be there. So in my mind, the way that you can get perhaps astrology back as something concrete is using modern methodologies that allow you to like deal with a lot of data. Like we can see a lot of data right now regarding celestial bodies. So it would be something that we would be able to find, and I wouldn't expect that to be something that the enlightenment time people to be able to work with. So, yo, Daniel, and what's good? Staniac the Maniac, or Staniac the Maniac. Ask how the law of one interprets astrology. All right, I think I have to wait until after we actually we could just have a separate one. Because I don't think we were allowed to ask follow-ups to deep research. How does the law of one interpret astrology? Examining. And then how are we looking here? All right, a comprehensive statistical and biological audit of astrological assertions. All right, in the law of one, astrology is viewed not as a system of fatalistic prediction, but as a profound tool for understanding the archetypal blueprint a soul chooses prior to incarnation. Ra, the entity speaking in the material, validates astrology as a significant way to understand the distortions, so the lessons and personality traits, necessary for spiritual evolution. So it's more a prescriptive archetype rather than a evaluative system. All right, here is how the law of one interprets astrology, structure for clarity, the validity of cosmic influences. Ra confirms that the planetary bodies and their alignments are not merely physical masses, but living macrocosmic beings with energies interact with their own. Whose energies interact with their own. Astrology works because the roots of mind, the deep subconscious, correspond to the archetypal nature of the cosmos. The planets represent fundamental energies that filter the one infinite creator's light into specific spectrums or lessons. At the moment of entry into the physical body, the birth, the incoming soul is imprinted with the specific energetic weather of the solar system. This imprint forms the basic personality shell and emotional biases for that lifetime. So, I mean, this is actually something that I could also see being relevant. Like, you could say that perhaps there's a correlation with certain things based on the month that you're born in, depending on where you are. And I would wonder if the variable that matters more so is the weather outside. Like, how cold is it? And if that would have an effect on development. So like that's also another way we could try to ground these types of ideas. Okay, New Age stuff. Something like stars are conscious and each one has its own archetypes, right? Right? Stars must be bored as heck. Yeah, they're just chilling up there. They're just looking out. They're probably looking at us, depending on how far away they are. Maybe they have just really good eyesight. But yeah, unfortunately, like we can't go with that type of idea. Like I've explained how difficult it is for us to have like a panpsychist view, given what we know of from the science, it would be very difficult to go even a step farther and to start characterizing the different, you know, sets of consciousness that a star would have, rather than, you know, just any other matter. So peeping stars, hell yeah, man! Those dinosaurs are surely living good. And then they're like, oh no. Or one of the stars was like, those dinosaurs are pissing me off, I'm gonna throw something at them. And that's how it all happened. All right, the pre-incarnative blueprint. The most distinctive interpretation is that your natal chart is a map of your pre-incarnative choices. Before you were born, you, as a soul, higher self, chose the specific time and place of your birth to ensure you had a certain astrological influences. All right, free will versus the stars emphasizes that astrology does not violate free will. The stars provide the climate or terrain of your life, but they do not dictate your actions. Okay, so it's just like dispositional in some sense. All right, I think I'm gonna have to put this to the side so that we can get through. Really, just to get to this guy as soon as we can. That said, I am very much interested in this trajectory. So we now have part 2, the mechanics of Western tropical astrology. Low-key, the idea that you chose this life is the best solution to the problem of evil. In what sense? Like, so once again, just to go back to the free will thing, it's not that you're choosing what happens throughout your life. You're choosing the conditions of your birth. So, you know, I don't know if it solves too much past your birth in that regard. Following that same way, Ra's way. Sounds a bit victim blamey in some sense. All right, part 2, the mechanics of Western tropical astrology. Western astrology operates as a complex symbolic language composed of 4 primary grammatical elements: planets, the actors; signs, the roles; houses, the stages; and aspects, the relationships. The planets, archetypal forces and motivations. In the geocentric perspective of astrology, the planets include the sun and the moon, the luminaries. Each celestial body represents a distinct psychological drive or function within the human psyche. And, you know, you could argue that, like, why aren't other stars or planets being included here? But you could imagine that perhaps there's some closeness that's necessary for there to be an effect on humans. That said, you would probably expect to see a much more significant effect from the sun than the moon in that case. Like, you know, that would be a hypothesis, that the sun would have a more pronounced effect given its like stature. All right, so then we get the sun, the hero, integration of the self, identity, vitality, purpose, will. That's the Leo. Okay. Moon, the mother, processing of emotion. Mercury, the messenger, transmission of data. Venus, the lover, establishment of value. Mars, the warrior, exertion of energy. Jupiter, the sage, expansion of horizons. Saturn, the elder, creation of structure. Uranus, the rebel, disruption of stasis. Neptune, the mystic, dissolution of boundaries. And Pluto, so the other, actually, you know what I just said is not that much of an issue. The other issue you have to contend with is the fact that we decided that Pluto is not large enough and might even be not as large as some other bodies we found. And thus, you would expect that there should be either more here or that Pluto shouldn't be included. That would be like a scientific angle here, but let's forget that as we continue. The Alchemist, transformation of essence, very nice. Could say karma is victim blaming also, right? I was about to say that. Belief in reincarnation, karma without belief in the sanctity of compassion is highly elitist. The Alchemist, hell yeah, let's get the Alchemist in here. Oh, I see what you. The Ocean Prime. Yeah, we should be playing that. Chilling on Pluto. Jacob, we got astrology day. We're going first. We're going over like a comprehensive overview, and then we're going over the empirical foundations. Basically, asking, are there any empirical foundations? And because we got this deep research stuff, we get to scour the interwebs. So, all right. So we're up to modern astrology. Traditional versus modern rulership. A critical distinction exists in how these planets are assigned dominion over the zodiac signs. Traditional astrology utilizes only the 7 visible planets, Sun through Saturn. The discovery of the outer planets, so Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, coincided with major shifts in human consciousness, revolution, spiritualism, psychoanalysis. Modern astrologers assigned these new planets rulership over Aquarius, Pisces, and Scorpio, respectively, arguing they represent transpersonal forces that affect generations. Traditionalists maintain the ancient rulership, arguing that the symmetry of the Thema Mundi, the mythical birth chart of the world, is broken by the inclusion of the outer planets. Yeah, if I were to go full astrology right now, like actually I'm speculating right now, but I would probably go based on those texts from thousands of years ago. Like they spent hundreds of years looking at patterns. I have more faith in that than just the trying to assign things like really quickly to new planets that we found. Like that seems very arbitrary in a sense. All right, the zodiac signs, elemental and modal filters. The zodiac is a belt of space around the ecliptic divided into 12 30-degree segments. The signs act as filters or costumes through which the planetary energies are expressed. They're classified by element, triplicity, and modality, quadruplicity. So the 4 elements, we got fire associated with spirit, intuition, and dynamism. Fire signs are Rajasic, initiating, and self-oriented, driven by inspiration and action. Earth, associated with the material world, sensation and stability. Earth signs focus on tangible results, security, and physical resources. Air, associated with the intellect, communication, and social relationships. Air signs are conceptual, objective, and relational. Water, associated with emotion, feeling, and the subconscious. Water signs are receptive, intuitive, and focused on connection and depth. All right. What sign is April? Aries. Oh. All right, I am Aries. So I'm fire. I'm associated with spirit, intuition, and dynamism. Self-oriented, driven by inspiration and action. All right. You know what? It's true. All right, what do we got? Isn't there some issue in astrology with the precession of something that has essentially caused all signs to be off by 1 compared to 2,000 years ago? I forget the precise stuff. No, but that's pretty interesting. Also, if that was something that, if that was something to apply here, and the question is, like, even in our current state of astrology, will they apply that going 2,000 years into the future? Because that would, affect how people think about this stuff. All right, what the anti-astrology lobby would have you believe. Sounds liberal. Amen, brother. Precession of the equinoxes. All right, the 3 modalities. Cardinal, these signs initiate the seasons. They're action-oriented, enterprising, and forceful. Then we've got the fixed modality. These signs occur in the middle of seasons. They are stabilizing, determined, and resistant to change. And the mutable. These signs end the seasons. They are adaptable, flexible, and transformative, preparing for the transition to the next phase. All right. So the 12 houses, the spheres of earthly experience, while the signs are universal celestial coordinates, the houses are deeply personal, determined by the Earth's daily rotation. The first house begins at the ascendant. The houses ground planetary archetypes into specific arenas of life. All right, so how does it work with days of the month here? How do you figure that one out? Think about this. If gravity was never described scientifically, it would still affect us. Prior to a certain point, everyone was wrong about it. You can arrive at similar, maybe seemingly arrogant thinking where it seems possible that there is something there, but everyone is wrong about it. Um, everyone is wrong is extreme, but you get my point. There is no guarantee that there is a person out there who has figured it out. Right, right. With regards to those planets that I was talking about, though, it's less about the fact that no one knew it 2,000 years ago. It's more of the methodology that led the people to thinking what they thought. So I think the methodology that led them to the first planets. What was it? Was it 9? Did it end up being 12? Is it just 10? So 7? 7 visible. Okay, yeah, first 7. The methodology that led to this view of 7 planets was, I would just argue, was more methodological and more robust than whatever quick decision was made in these like couple hundred years. Especially as like that information was passed down to as we saw, passed across different groups with different technologies and understandings over thousands of years. I had the name a bit wrong. Okay, astrology has such a long history that it'd probably be more fruitful if we focused on one tradition in this instance. There are different kinds, no, like Babylonian, Greek, Indian, etc. Yeah, I'm not. During the intro, we did go through all these. Well, we went through really the trajectory of it. So I imagine as this kept getting passed on, obviously the tradition still remained in the area where it came from, and perhaps we will actually discuss that in the next section here. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think these ideas are very different in each of these areas. And what I asked in this second discussion here is like, hey, regardless of where we are, like regardless of whether this was, the Hindu view or if this was the Western perspective, is there any empirical science that grounds any of it? Like I want to go wherever the science takes us. It doesn't have to be one. I might be wrong, but I think there's only 2 big types: Western and Eastern, like Hindu, Vedic. You're like maybe now it's kind of settled into 2. So we'll see. Structural dynamics. The angular houses are the most powerful, corresponding to the cardinal points of the day. Planets have the max. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to go deep into this, like these rule sets. Modern astrology has largely rehabilitated these houses, viewing the 8th as a place of psychological transformation, and the 12th as the realm of spiritual enlightenment. Right, the aspects, geometric relationships. Planets interact with one another through angular distances called aspects. The geometry of the aspect determines the nature of the interaction. So conjunction, 0 degrees, the most intense aspect. Energies blend completely. The nature of the conjunction depends on the planets involved. Okay. A hard aspect representing polarity and tension. Okay, so this is like, I'm guessing what's going on here is like, you imagine that you imagine a vertex going from the Earth to one of these planets, and then you imagine a vertex going to another planet, and we're measuring the angle in that these 2 vertices are making off of the Earth. So this is 0 degrees, I'm guessing, is 2 planets are like in the same exact direction, following the same vertex. So if there was a eclipse, like that would be, that would be this aspect. Man, the night sky must have been really something if a bunch of people just looked at it and went, "This is neat. I'm going to create an entire mystical field of study about it." Oh man, I mean they thought about a lot more than just astrology. I feel like just the fact that the Greeks came up with all the personalities related to pretty much everything they saw. They didn't have much. I mean, I shouldn't say they didn't have much else, but they didn't have as much as we have to keep us entertained. All right, 90 degrees aspect of friction and crisis. 120, a soft aspect representing flow, harmony, and ease. Sextile, a supportive aspect representing opportunity. So like a follow-up I would ask is like how did we arrive at these types of rules? Like was this just intuitive, or is there like what I'm seeing with the Western tradition is the introduction of different rules that might not have as empirical of a basis as it seemed the original astrological development to have. That's not to say that they were like empirical in the way that we want our science to be empirical today, but they were still empirical. They followed a methodology. It was towards finding patterns rather than, going off of intuition. But maybe there were patterns that led to these rules. All right, part 3, the branches of application from inquiry to election. Astrology is not a single practice, but a collection of specialized branches, each designed for a special function. Okay. Natal astrology. This is the most widely recognized form, focusing on the analysis of an individual's birth chart. It assumes that the quality of time at the moment of birth is imprinted upon the individual. Modern natal astrology is heavily psychological, using the charts to understand character, trauma, and potential. Then we've got mundane astrology. It's the study of world events, nations, and history. It predates natal astrology and focuses on collective fate. Mundane astrologers track cycles such as the 20-year Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions to predict shifts in political eras. They also use ingress charts, charts cast for the moment the sun enters a cardinal sign, like Aries, to forecast the fortunes of a nation for the coming year. All right, then we have horary astrology. Is the art of answering specific questions. It is distinct because the chart is cast not for a birth, but for the moment a question is understood by the astrologer. It is highly deterministic and rule-bound. So the methodology is the asker is represented by the ruler of the first house, the quesidid. How do you say this? Quesidid? Is an old or uncommon word meaning sought or inquired about. Interesting. The quesidid, so the object or person asked about, is represented by the ruler of the relevant house. The traditional rules dictate when a chart cannot be read. For instance, if the ascendant is in the very early or late degrees of a sign, it suggests it is too early to know the outcome or too late to change it. If the moon makes no further aspects to planets before leaving its current sign, it is void of course. Void of course, not like void of course. In horary, this often indicates that nothing will come of the matter or the status quo will remain. William Lilly, the 17th century English astrologer William Lilly, is the foremost authority on horary. His masterpiece, Christian Astrology, 1647, remains the standard text. He successfully used horary to locate lost fish, predict the outcome of battles in the English Civil War, and advise clients on marriage and business. Okay, and then we got electional astrology, which proactively chooses a moment. It is the art of selecting the most auspicious time to initiate an action, such as a wedding, surgery, or business launch, to ensure a favorable outcome. Radical versus ephemeral or ephemeral. Radical elections align the event chart with the user's natal chart. And then ephemeral elections focus purely on the sky's condition at that moment. All right, and then case study, we've got the coronation of Elizabeth I that we already talked about. The synastry and relationship astrology. This branch analyzes the interaction between two charts, compares planetary positions between two people, calculates the mathematical midpoints between two charts to create a third virtual chart representing the relationship itself. All right, so part 4, global systems and comparative cosmology. While Western astrology dominates the Anglosphere, it is one of several major global systems. Comparing Western, Vedic, and Chinese astrologies reveals fundamental differences in how time and space are conceptualized. So the Vedic astrology, the science of light, Vedic astrology developed in ancient India, differs significantly from the Western system. The zodiac controversy. The most profound difference is the coordinate system. Western astrology uses the tropical zodiac, which is anchored to the seasons. Vedic astrology uses the sidereal zodiac, which is anchored to the visible constellations. Due to the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, the two systems drift apart by approximately 1 degree every 72 years. Here we go. This is what you were referring to. Currently, the difference is about 24 degrees. Consequently, a person with a sun in Aries in the Western system will likely have a sun in Pisces in the Vedic system. Okay. Dashes, planetary periods. Vedic astrology utilizes a unique predictive system called dashas. The most common is a 120-year cycle where each planet rules a specific number of years in a fixed sequence. For example, Venus rules 20 years, Saturn 19, Jupiter 16. The starting point of the cycle is determined by the moon's position at birth. This allows Vedic astrologers to predict which areas of life will be active at specific times with high precision. Okay, lunar mansions. The Vedic zodiac is further subdivided into 27 constellations. These lunar mansions provide a layer of psychological and karmic detail that is absent in the 12-sign solar zodiac. All right, so, and I'm curious when these were defined as well. Remedial, because like a 27, I'm going to say this in I think in machine learning terms, but like 27, what is it? Classifiers? In classification systems, like what are those things called? Classes? Like to find 27 different significant categories like this without some sort of machine learning is incredibly difficult. So, 12 seems a lot more doable, but 27 is kind of insane. All right, remedial measures. Unlike the often descriptive nature of Western astrology, Vedic astrology is prescriptive. If a chart indicates negative karma, for example, a difficult Saturn period, the astrologer prescribes remedies such as chanting specific mantras, performing charity, or wearing gemstones to mitigate the effects. Okay. Honestly, astrology almost seems logical / possible compared to standard religions, right? Yes, especially if we go back to those branches developed over just thousands of years, which I guess is all of them today. But I would wonder where certain more recent rules have come from. Let's make a chart for Stan and see how correct it is. All right, natal stuff is fascinating. I wonder if the idea is that the mother's belly deflects the solar power until the baby pops out, and then it's vulnerable to the stars. It's also interesting. There are 12 sign systems when there's 13 constellations. The last one is just ignored for some reason. Anyone who's played Final Fantasy IX will know the name of the last one. I forget it. Opharius or something. Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think like the most intuitive way to make sense of like 12 signs, you know, would be to consider the common characteristics of climate and temperature during those months, and to find some sort of correlation between early development, which is crucial for the, you know, for the development of a child, and to, you know, find the correlation between that and you know, the actual trajectory of the development. I'm not sure, like, you know, perhaps a child who's colder is, you know, going to be stronger or not, or something like that, or have a different personality trait, more or less neuroticism because they've overcome cold, or you know, same with heat. So who knows? Gemini does. Gemini's going to tell us. All right, Chinese astrology, the calendrical. It wouldn't be salendrical cycle, right? Calendrical cycle. Chinese astrology is fundamentally different from both Western and Vedic systems, as it is not based on the celestial positions of the planets in the sky, but on calendrical cycles of time, the 60-year cycle. The system is based on the interaction of the 10 heavenly stems associated with the 5 elements and the 12 earthly branches, the zodiac animals. So the 5 elements, unlike the Western 4 elements, the Chinese system uses wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. These elements interact in productive cycles and destructive cycles, creating a dynamic model of energetic balance. All right, the 4 pillars of destiny. A person is not just a dragon or a rat. The 4 pillars system analyzes the animal and element present in the year, month, day, and hour of birth. This creates a complex matrix of 8 characters that describes the individual's destiny and elemental balance. All right, so solar versus lunar. The Chinese zodiac follows the lunisolar calendar, meaning the new year shifts annually between late January and mid-February. Western astrology follows the solar Gregorian calendar. Okay. Part 5, the philosophical divide, fate versus free will. Here we go. A major tension exists within the astrological community today between traditional revivalists and modern psychological practitioners. So, modern psychological astrology, developing in the 20th century, largely under the influence of theosophy and C.G. Jung, Carl Jung. Modern astrology, I'm guessing that's Carl Jung. Modern astrology reframed the discipline as a tool for self-actualization. So the birth chart is viewed as a map of the psyche, not a script of unchangeable fate. Malefic planets like Saturn are reinterpreted as teachers or opportunities for growth rather than sources of objective misfortune. The focus is on the individual's internal experience and evolution. So the technique uses the outer planets heavily and emphasizes character analysis over prediction. Okay. So in one sense, in my mind, this is like a step towards a more like empirical view, where you would not use it as some like fatalistic thing, but as perhaps just some aspect of your disposition that you could work with. It's akin to what we're going to do here, but it's also stepping away from empirical science because it's really doubling down on the idea that there is something to be there is some signal to be gained from someone's birth. All right, traditional astrology. Since the 1990s, a movement has emerged to translate and practice ancient texts. Project Hindsight, leading to a revival of older techniques. Traditional astrology is more deterministic. It views the chart as descriptive of external events and objective reality. It maintains the distinction between benefic, helpful, and malefic, probably benefic and malefic, harmful planets. A planet is detriment or fall a planet in detriment or fall is not just a psychological challenge, it is objectively impeded from bringing about its significations. All right, so technique focuses on prediction, concrete outcomes, and the use of 7 visible planets. It often rejects modern psychological softening of difficult placements. Wow, this is a crazy dispute to have. Okay, what's going on here? Boring. Take it back to the Babylonians talking about a 900,000 strong army being engulfed in a large wave. True, that was pretty interesting stuff. All right, so I didn't even ask for this, but it's given it to me because I asked for a comprehensive view of astrology. So, scientific scrutiny and psychological mechanisms. From the perspective of modern science, the claims of astrology regarding a physical mechanism of action have been thoroughly falsified. Okay. I was hoping that we would get a little bit farther before we got hit with something like that. The divergence of science and symbolism. Physics identified 4 fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. None of these can account for astrological effects. The gravitational pull of the obstetrician delivering... okay, I actually don't know how to say that, but I know what the word is now. Obstetrician delivering a baby is mathematically stronger than that of Mars. Okay, yes, but that isn't the argument. Furthermore, the precession of the equinoxes means that the tropical signs no longer align with the constellations they are named after, a fact that astronomers often cite to debunk the system, right? But that still also doesn't take away the possibility of there being some correlation between birth month and some effect, some developmental effect. Of course, it wouldn't be related to the planets, so maybe we've already lost the idea of astrology, but I'm just trying to find something. Psychological explanations for efficacy. Despite the lack of physical mechanism, millions find astrology personally accurate. Psychology offers several explanations. The Barnum effect. First demonstrated by Bertram Forer in 1948, this effect describes the tendency of individuals to rate vague, general personality descriptions as highly accurate to themselves. Horoscopes are often written with Barnum statements. For example, you have a need for other people to like and admire you that apply to almost everyone. So I think the way you would want to test this is you would want to have like a survey where it includes properties of different months and to see if there's a correlation between your month and the things you're answering. I think that's how you would do it. You wouldn't just show that people are going to say yes to the things that are in their month. You need to have some type of complexity there. All right. Confirmation bias. Believers actively seek information that confirms their self-image while ignoring contradictory evidence. And the placebo effect and suggestion. Positive horoscopes can influence behavior, leading to a self-fulfilling prophecy where the individual acts in ways that make the prediction come true. All right. Jungian synchronicity. Jung proposed an alternative view, synchronicity. He argued that astrology works not through causality, planets causing events, but through a causal connecting principles. The internal state of the psyche and the external state of the cosmos are meaningful coincidences that reflect the same underlying moment in time. For Jung, the chart was a tool to access the archetypes of the collective unconscious. Okay, that... I don't know if he was cooking there, but we'll see. All right, part 7, the contemporary Renaissance and the astrological economy. Astrology is currently experiencing a massive resurgence, transforming from a niche interest into a major cultural and economic force. The market boom. The global astronomy market is experiencing explosive growth. Valued at $4 billion in 2024, it is projected to reach $30 billion by 2033, with a compound annual growth rate of roughly 24%. Demographics. The boom is driven by millennials and Gen Z. Studies show that 62% of Gen Z believe their zodiac sign accurately represents their personality. In an era of economic instability, climate anxiety, and secularization, astrology offers a framework for meaning. It provides a sense of control and cosmic order without the dogma of organized religion. Right. So, obviously we don't want to be judgmental here. There's good reason to pick this up. Even if we can't find empirical grounds, that doesn't mean there's not an empirical product of wellness and well-being from people picking this stuff up. It can still give them that aspect of meaning in their life. We have a tariff. Okay, the thing about months is that there's no real difference between the last day of a month and the first day of the next month. Right. I guess they. I mean, the thing still stands, but I guess the days are somewhat offset, so it's not as arbitrary as like the calendar months in some branches, but still you would have that idea of like maybe it's like it's most acute in the middle of that period, and then it kind of transforms. So if you were born on the last day of a month, you can imagine that you are actually somewhere in between the 2 months, even though you fall slightly closer to one. All right, I have a terrific idea. I'm in. 4 billion, you say. Say no more. I hear business opportunity. Should I pivot the entire channel? Is that what you're saying? We should stop all the... Actually, I guess we're already doing self-help. We might as well. And that's actually something we should mention, though, in part 3. Like, we do need to mention the effects of religion and astrology here. We need to cover the effects on well-being of spiritual practices, religion, astrology, etc. Like we aren't like in part 3, we're not like situated to make any prescriptive statement about whether or not people should or should not be religious or into astrology. Like that's not really the purpose of part 3 here. The purpose of part 3 is specifically to orient people towards finding a more meaningful life for themselves. So while we will say that we don't have like empirical groundings for some of these things, that doesn't mean that people who are believing in them don't get a positive effect from that. Obviously, then there's the larger discussion of like what are the externalities of that, and does it affect society in a certain way? But that's out of the scope and jurisdiction of the document. So, all right. Astrology website side hustle. I'm a software engineer, yeah. I think it missed an effect while mentioning confirmation bias and Barnum statements. I think COPE is huge too. So how does COPE differ from confirmation bias, out of curiosity? Or I miss it. So it wasn't mentioned by name or specifically, but I guess I wonder if there is. Maybe it's just talking about confirmation bias in like a very broad way. Okay. So we got the app economy and AI integration. Technology has revolutionized the accessibility of astrology. Apps like CoStar, The Pattern, and AstroTalk utilize artificial intelligence to generate hyper-personalized readings instantly. Apps are integrating astrology with mental health tools. Features like mood tracking, synced with planetary transits, allow users to correlate their emotional states with celestial movements, effectively rebranding astrology as a wellness tool. The Asia Pacific region particularly India, is a dominant player. Apps like Ganesha Speaks have reported $58 revenue increases driven by a cultural affinity for Vedic astrology combined with modern smartphone accessibility. The industry has successfully pivoted from fortune telling to wellness. Venture capital is flowing into the sector. CoStar raising over $5 million, viewing astrology as a vertical of the $1.5 trillion global wellness market. Corporate wellness programs and Silicon Valley executives are increasingly engaging with these tools as methods for mindfulness and self optimization. So, yeah, there could be something pernicious here. Pernicious is the word, right? Right. Okay, so there's the possibility that there's a pernicious angle here, but it's so difficult to consider whether or not the positives outweigh the pernicious effects, or you know, just like the fact that, you know, Silicon Valley is probably just trying to get profits. So wellness dwarfs the pharma industry. Wow, that's crazy. I wouldn't have expected that, but given the circumstances in the world, I wouldn't doubt it. So, oh my goodness, I'm such a Scorpio. Oh, in the sense of, oh, that's why I keep making this mistake. That sort of cope, some degree of discarding blame. Okay, I see. It's just, it's biasing interpretations in oh, okay, but some degree of discarding blame. Oh, yeah. So it's less of like, but I guess confirmation bias is also going away from something else. But yeah, it's helping you. It's defending. It allows you to defend yourself against cognitive dissonance and the difficulty of dealing with certain possibilities. All right, conclusion. The mirror of the cosmos. The comprehensive scope of astrology reveals a discipline that is far more than the sum of its newspaper horoscopes. It is a vast historical edifice that has served as humanity's primary framework for organizing time and meaning for 4 millennia. From the omen readers of Babylon to the algorithm designers of Silicon Valley, the impulse remains the same: to find a connection between the human experience and the cosmos. So, well, I would argue with Silicon Valley, it's the impulse is to make money, but astrology survives today not as a physical science, but as a cultural technology. It offers a rich vocabulary for personality, a structure for understanding time, and a ritual for introspection. Whether one views it as a profound spiritual truth, a psychological placebo, or a lucrative data-driven industry, its enduring presence confirms that the human need to look upward for answers is fundamental, timeless, and unlikely to fade. True. All right, we got systems overview, essential dignities. All right, I think we're on to the full view now. I mean, I think we already got the answer, but let's see if there's anything here, because I think this will actually go more in depth and maybe we'll get something. So that's discarding blame. Okay. All right, the demarcation of empirical reality. The inquiry into the empirical foundations of astrology necessitates a rigorous intellectual demarcation. For millennia, astrology has functioned as a hermeneutic system, a language of symbols and archetypes used to interpret the human condition. However, the user's query demands a departure from this cultural or symbolic understanding. It seeks a grounded rationale, a practical takeaway rooted in empirical science. This report accepts that challenge, setting aside the metaphysical debates regarding fate or divine will to focus exclusively on the measurable, the statistical, and the biological. To evaluate astrology through the lens of empirical science is to subject it to the harsh light of statistical probability, large-scale demographic analysis, and neurobiological correlation. It requires distinguishing between astrology as a celestial mechanism, which remains scientifically unproven, and astrological effects as observable phenomena, which may exist, albeit often with terrestrial causes. Aha, okay. There we go. Because I think what I've been describing with temperature and climate would be called terrestrial. So this, but I guess it depends if that's affected by the the planets. So we'll see. This report synthesizes over half a century of research, ranging from the contentious Mars effect studies of the mid 20th century to the sophisticated double blind experiments published in journals like Nature, and finally to the emerging field of chronobiology, which offers a grounded biological explanation for the seasonality of human temperament. The analysis is structured to be exhaustive, evaluating the methodology, statistical power, and replicability of the available evidence. We do not seek to validate the worldview of the astrologer, but to determine if there is any empirical residue, any signal in the noise that rigorous science has failed to explain away. Okay. The epistemological framework. The investigation is categorized into 3 distinct domains of empirical inquiry, each offering a different grade of evidence. So, anomalistic, I don't know if that's how you would say that. Anomalistic statistics. This covers the Mars effect and other planetary correlations with eminence. These are the hard anomalies, data points that are statistically significant, robust across large samples, and difficult to attribute to chance or bias, yet lack a known physical mechanism. Okay, that's cool. Then we got biological correlates. This explores the season of birth effects. Here, the evidence is overwhelming and accepted by mainstream medical science. However, the mechanism is terrestrial. So, photoperiod, nutrition, viral load, suggesting that astrology may be a pre-scientific index of biological seasonality. I see. I guess there's not a significant relation between our climate and the planets, or else it should have mentioned that. But we can ask that. We can look into that specifically. Psychological and sociological nulls. This covers the direct tests of astrological practice, chart matching, time twins, and synastry compatibility. In these domains, the evidence is largely negative or statistically marginal, highlighting the role of cognitive bias and variable reinforcement in sustaining belief. Okay. Here we go. The statistical anomaly of eminence, the Gauquelin Mars effect. The most formidable empirical fortress in the history of astrological research is undoubtedly the work of Michel and Francois Gauquelin. Unlike the popular sun sign astrology found in newspapers, they focused on the diurnal movement of planets, their position relative to the horizon and meridian at the exact moment of birth. Okay. So the diurnal sector hypothesis. The methodology was rooted in the calculation of sectors. He divided the sky into 12 or sometimes 18 or 36 zones relative to the observer's horizon. As the Earth rotates, a planet rises in the east, culminates at the midheaven, and sets in the west. Their hypothesis was that eminent professionals, those who had achieved a distinct level of historical note, were born with statistically improbable frequency when specific planets occupied the key sectors. Sector 1 and Sector 4. So Mars associated with sports champions, military leaders, and physicians. Jupiter associated with actors, politicians, and journalists. Saturn associated with scientists and scholars, and Moon associated with writers and creative artists. The most robust of these findings was the Mars effect among sports champions. In a sample of over 2,000 eminent athletes, they observed that Mars appeared in the key sectors, rising or culminating, approximately 22% of the time, against a chance expectation of roughly 17%. With a deviation of 5 percentage points, although 5% may seem modest in the context of a sample size of thousands, the odds against this occurring by chance are astronomical. See what they did there? Often calculated in the range of millions to one. Crucially, This effect was not found in the general population. It appeared to be an aristocracy of the planetary effect linked specifically to high achievement or eminence. So was it just Mars, or was it the other ones as well? But this would be, I don't know if this would be something that is practical enough for us to put into part 2 of this document. You'd have to look up where these planets were during your birth, and then consider whether or not you should go into becoming a sports champion or a military leader or physician. I don't know if that's going to help, or if that's just going to mess with you, especially for such a small level. Because once again, and I say once again because we covered this 2 weeks ago, the statistical significance that we're seeing here at population levels is not large enough to give an individual a significant direction towards their own life. We saw that with the specific nature and nurture discussion. That like our current, so that if you were to get your genetics tested right now, you wouldn't have a significant key to like how you ought to leverage your, to leverage that information, to use that. Like, it just wouldn't be significant enough. You wouldn't have enough information that it could prime you into some direction, but then it would be some sort of self-actualizing thing. All right, the Battle of Replications, Psychop and the Zelen test. The publication of these findings triggered a decades-long conflict between them and the scientific establishment, primarily represented by the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, now CSI. Professor Zelen, a statistician at Harvard, proposed a definitive test to rule out demographic artifacts. The concern was that perhaps more babies are born at certain times of the day, a known demographic fact, or that Mars spends more time in certain sectors due to astronomical reasons, and that these two cycles might overlap to create a false Mars effect. Zelen challenged the family to collect a control group of non-eminent individuals born at the exact same dates and places as the champions. If the effect was due to demographics of astronomy, the control group should show the same Mars distribution. The result, they performed the test on thousands of control subjects. The Mars effect disappeared in the control group. The rate of Mars in key sectors for non-eminent people was exactly at the chance level. Implication, this confirmed that the anomaly was specific to the eminent group, effectively ruling out astronomical or demographic artifacts as the cause. Okay. But we've got a replication. A Belgian skeptical committee undertook an independent replication using a fresh sample of 535 sports champions. They found the exact same statistical anomaly. The Mars rate in key sectors was significantly higher than chance. The committee refused to accept the result as a validation of the Mars effect, arguing instead that there must be an unknown demographic error in the theoretical calculation, despite the Zelen test having ostensibly controlled for this. Okay. The eminence effect. Linear regression. The controversy eventually shifted from is the data real to how was the data selected. Skeptics argued that the original tests might have biased the sample by arbitrarily including or excluding athletes to fit the hypothesis. Enter Professor Ertel, a German psychologist who subjected the entire file to a rigorous reanalysis in the 1980s and 2000s. Ertel realized that eminence was a vague variable. To quantify it, he counted the number of times each athlete was cited in standard sports dictionaries and reference books. He then ranked the athletes on a scale of eminence based on these citation counts. Ertel found a stunning linear relationship between the degree of eminence and the strength of the Mars effect. Okay. This gradient of effect is scientifically profound. If the Mars effect were due to data manipulation or selection bias, one would expect the effect to be scattered or consistent across the bias sample. A linear correlation with an external variable strongly suggests an underlying natural phenomenon, a signal that intensifies with the magnitude of the subject. Ertel also addresses the accusations of bias. He found that he added back the lesser athletes that they had supposedly discarded, or whom skeptics claim should have been included. The effect actually diminishes exactly as the eminence effect hypothesis would predict, since adding lesser athletes dilutes the sample with low eminence individuals. Conversely, refining the sample to only the most cited athletes made the statistical spike even sharper. Interesting. The current status of the Mars effect for the user seeking a practical takeaway. The Mars effect represents the single most resilient empirical claim in astrology. It is robust. It has survived multiple independent checks and reanalyses. It is specific. It applies only to the diurnal position and only to eminent professionals. That's what Gemini takes as practical takeaways. There is no known physical force that can account for it. It is unexplained. However, it is effectively useless for the average person. Unless one is a world-class athlete or a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, the planetary effect appears to be non-existent. It is an anomaly of the extremes, not a norm, or not a rule of the mean. Okay. That's our first big thing. That was our strongest connection, I guess. So we'll see. Does Mars effect mean early in the year, like January? If so, that's pretty trivial. No, it was specifically the placement. It was the diurnal placement of Mars in certain sectors, Sector 1 and Sector 4. So a planet, okay, as the Earth rotates, a planet rises in the east. Sector 1 culminates at Sector 4 and sets in the west. So the hypothesis was that eminent professionals were born with statistically improbable frequency when specific planets occupied the key sectors. So I don't know when that is. I don't even know if that's like is diurnal during the day? Is that what diurnal means? During the day. Okay, so yeah, this is a daily changing thing that you would see, like at your time of birth. Where was Mars? Was it in either of these sectors relative to the observer's horizon? So also very, very difficult. Not only you have to find the day, but you have to find the day and time of your birth, and you have to figure out where Mars was relative to that, and then you got to figure out if you're an athlete, if you're an aspiring athlete, and then even then it's not statistically significant enough to apply for your own self. So I thought it was just the relative age effect. Okay. World-class athletes do world-class things. Insane discovery. True. Does it say that somewhere? Is that something I said? Is that All right, the definitive disproof and its reversal, the Carlson study. While the Mars effect suggests a lingering anomaly for the elite, the question remains, can astrology describe the personality of the average individual? The seminal test of this question was conducted by Sean Carlson and published in Nature in 1985. It is widely decided as the study that put the final nail in astrology's coffin. However, a deeper look at the data reveals a different story. Ooh. All right, experimental design. It was a double-blind test designed to satisfy both the scientific community and the astrological community. 116 subjects were administered the personality inventory, the California Personality Inventory, a standardized and widely respected psychological assessment. So this is pre-Big Five, so I think it's a less grounded personality survey, but that's probably not that big of a deal for this. Astrologers, 28 reputable professional astrologers participated. For each subject, an astrologer was given the subject's natal chart, calculated from birth time, 3 anonymous profiles. So these are the personality profiles. 1 belonging to the subject and 2 belonging to random controls. The astrologer had to identify which of the 3 profiles matched the natal chart. They also rated their confidence in each match on a scale of 1 to 10. A separate arm of the study asked subjects to identify their own chart interpretation from a lineup to test for the Barnum effect. Okay. So the Barnum effect being that subjects might identify these things in themselves despite that they're quite ambiguous. It's quite easy to identify them in yourself. I think Darren Brown did this in an episode. Oh, I'm sorry. Darren Brown is the host of what show? All right, the original conclusion. Carlson reported that the astrologer's success rate was indistinguishable from chance. So chance expectation, 33.3%, and astrologer performance, 34%. Confidence. Carlson claimed there was no correlation between the astrologer's confidence ratings and their accuracy. The conclusion published in Nature was unequivocal. Astrology is no better than chance. This became the standard scientific citation for debunking astrology for the next 20 years. All right, the statistical critique. Ertel is back in the picture, and Curie in 2009, 2011. In 2009, Ertel published a reanalysis of the Carlson data in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, followed by further refinement by Robert Curie in Correlation in 2011. They uncovered significant methodological issues in how Carlson had processed the data. The piecemeal error: he had not analyzed the astrologer's performance as a single aggregate group. Instead, he segmented the data into samples based on confidence levels and analyzed each subsample independently. By slicing the sample size into smaller chunks, the statistical power of the test was drastically reduced. A small effect that might be significant in a sample of 100 becomes statistically invisible in 3 samples of 33. All right. When Ertel reaggregated the data to analyze the performance of the astrologers across the entire study, the results shifted across the threshold of significance. The astrologers correctly matched the charts with a p-value of p equals 0.054. This is marginally significant, just missing the strict p less than 0.05 cutoff. All right, when the analysis took into account the degree of fit, the 1 to 10 rating scale, the p-value improved to p equals 0.037. By standard scientific convention, p less than 0.05 is statistically significant. So Curie calculated the effect size at approximately r equals 0.1. While this is a small effect, comparable to the correlation between psychotherapy and outcome in some studies, it is not zero. So it's small comparable to that effect. It's not similar. So, but once again, with something so significantly, statistically insignificant, that suggests that a single individual wouldn't be able to do much with it. All right, the reanalysis forces a nuance that the original debunking missed. It does not prove that astrology is a highly reliable tool. An effect size of 0.1 means that for any single reading, the accuracy is only slightly better than guessing. However, it definitively contradicts the claim that there is zero empirical foundation. The data suggests that skilled astrologers using the CPI as a benchmark were able to extract a signal that exceeded chance expectation. The fact that the confidence metric showed a linear trend, so astrologers were more accurate than when they said they were confident, mirrors the eminence effect in the other work, a weak but persistent signal that behaves in statistically consistent ways. The practical takeaway: so properly analyzed, the study is arguably weak evidence for astrology rather than strong evidence against it. It suggests that while astrology is not a crystal ball, it may capture personality nuances that a skilled practitioner can correlate with psychological profiles slightly better than random chance would allow. Okay. So all this being said, this is where we are probably going to have the highest chance of getting something, at least intuitively. This is what I'm getting at, or this is where I think my mind is going. The user asked for grounded rationale. The strongest candidate for this comes not from the stars, but from the sun, specifically the photoperiod, day length, at the time of birth. This field, known as season of birth research, provides a robust biological mechanism that overlaps significantly with astrological archetypes. So the mechanism, photoperiodic imprinting. The human brain is highly sensitive to environmental light cues during development, particularly during the perinatal period, the weeks immediately before and after birth. This sensitivity is mediated by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock, and the pineal gland, which secretes melatonin. Melatonin neurodevelopment. Melatonin is not just a sleep hormone, it is a developmental regulator. In the womb, the fetus relies on maternal melatonin, which crosses the placenta. The maternal melatonin signal is determined by the season. So long days equals short melatonin duration. Short days equals long melatonin duration. This seasonal melatonin signal imprints the developing SCN, permanently altering the baseline settings of the individual's circadian rhythms and neurotransmitter systems. So monoamine turnover. Research has shown that the season of birth affects the turnover rates of key neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. So individuals born in summer tend to have different cerebrospinal fluid levels of 5-HIAA, a serotonin metabolite, and HVA, a dopamine metabolite, compared to those born in winter. These differences persist into adulthood, suggesting a permanent hardware setting established at birth. Here we go. So biological phenotypes and astrological archetypes. When we map these biological findings into the zodiac, the empirical justification for certain astrological assertions becomes striking. The ancient astrologers may have been observing biological SOB phenotypes and attributing them to the constellations the sun occupied at the time. Okay. So, season of birth. We got summer. This is going to be June to August. We got hypothermic temperament, high energy, optimism, rapid mood cycling, higher risk of bipolar disorder, higher novelty seeking. So the biological mechanism is high perinatal dopamine exposure, short melatonin duration. So this is a Leo Cancer, expressive, dramatic, sunny, emotional, extroverted. And the concordance, the Leo trait of being outgoing and dramatic aligns with the hyperthymic dopamine profile. The hyperthymic. All right, so in winter, if you're born in the winter, December to February, depressive/resilient, lower irritability, but higher risk of schizophrenia and seasonal affective disorder, reduced hippocampal volume. So the biological mechanism, low maternal vitamin D, long melatonin duration, viral load, flu season impact, Capricorn, Aquarius, stoic, reserved, detached, prone to melancholy, discipline. So the concordance is strong. The Capricorn trait of restriction and seriousness aligns with the winter biological profile. Resource conservation, low energy expenditure. All right, so that autumn, September to November, we're getting a moderate concordance here. Low depressive scores, significantly lower tendency toward depression than winter births. I would imagine that the winter births would harden up the individual rather than making it more likely. Decreasing photoperiod, balanced nutrient availability post-harvest. So Libra, Scorpio, relationship focused, intense but balanced. So it supports the social nature of air signs via lower depressive isolation. But I guess that's the strongest it has. And then the spring, March to May, novelty seeking, high impulsivity, higher risk of suicide in some studies. Increasing photoperiod triggering activation systems. Aries, Taurus, impulsive, energetic, sensual, grounded, Taurus. So moderate here. The Aries impulsivity tracks with the spring activation of the dopamine system. Okay. Practical takeaway. The Proxy theory. This evidence provides a grounded rationale for why sun sign astrology feels accurate to many people. So the assertion, I am a Leo, therefore I am going out, therefore I am outgoing. The empirical reality, you were born in late July, August. Your developing brain was exposed to maximum photoperiod and specific maternal hormonal baselines. This imprinted a hyperthymic temperament. The astrologer is correct about the trait, but wrong about the cause. The sun in Leo is not a force acting on the person. It is a calendar marker for a biological season. This proxy theory explains why the signal is real, but the system is flawed. Okay, but what this doesn't tell us is how strong this signal is. So how... What was this called? This is called SOB, season of birth effects. So how statistically significant are SOB effects? Let's get this going. How statistically significant are these effects? That's what we need to know now. Okay, let's take a short break here. Oh, he's the mind control guy. Fantastic entertainer. This has got to be some bullshit. There's no way. Was that regarding the literally what I'm talking about here? The SOB effects, the season of birth effects? Shout out Capricorns. Hell yeah. All right, statistical significance for the season of birth effects varies widely depending on what you are measuring. In short, disease risk and immunity. Highly statistically significant, robust replicated findings, but the effect size is usually small. So sports and academic success, highly statistically significant and has a large effect size due to the relative age effect. Okay. Personality and temperament, generally statistically insignificant. Weak, inconsistent, or likely noise. Okay, so the main, or like I guess the main, one of the main Western astrology parts is actually insignificant here, but we get the sports and academic success. Here's a breakdown of the statistical reality of season of birth effects separated by domain. Mental health and disease. Statistical strength high, effect size small. This is the area with the most robust scientific evidence. Large-scale epidemiological studies, often utilizing millions of records, have found consistent patterns linking birth seasons to specific health outcomes. Schizophrenia, this is the most replicated finding in the field. Meta-analyses consistently show a 5.8% increased risk for individuals born in late winter, early spring. In the northern hemisphere. All right. Extremely high. The effect reverses in the southern hemisphere, proving this is environmental rather than astrological. Oh wow. Okay, yeah. So this is huge. This is where you could see it's certainly not astrological. All right, allergies and eczema. People born in autumn/winter have a statistically higher risk of food allergies and atopic dermatitis. Lack of vitamin D and higher I'm so sorry, Jacob. I'm just we're just going over all these things about January, January and December. All right, so here we go. We got higher risk of food allergies and atopic dermatitis, lack of vitamin D, and higher exposure to indoor allergens during the first few months of life trains the immune system incorrectly. Wow. Multiple sclerosis. There is a well-documented latitudinal gradient and birth month effect, with spring births often associated with higher risk, linked strongly to maternal vitamin D deficiency during the third trimester. Okay. So is this like suggesting that like maybe you want to have a kid in like late summer just to reduce the chance of these things? If any of this was proven significant, everyone would be having babies during a specific season. You would have Pinterest and TikTok trends about this with all the moms going crazy. Well, I don't think that people want to, like, this would be controversial, which is why I think it wouldn't be super popular. But one thing to think of is when they start school. If they start school later in their life, they likely will do better because their brain is more developed. I think that's another thing. Yeah, it could come down to that type of variable too. All right, relative age effect does extend beyond sports, by the way, also visible in scholarly development, for example, or etc. Kind of interesting, actually. Is there a Daniel Orr? True. Where's the? Where? Yeah, in the Daniel Zor. We need the full Daniel circuit team, the whole logic team. Abolish schooling for real. Enough of this relative age effectism. True. All right. The catch. While statistically significant, the absolute risk increase is tiny for an individual. If the baseline risk of schizophrenia is 1%, spring birth might raise it to 1.08. So, yeah, this isn't really like enough to warrant, changing your plans of when you should have your kid. This is still like population level significance. All right, sports and academics. The relative age effect. Statistical strength very high, and the effect size is large, though. This is the strongest SOB effect, but it is social, not biological. It is known as the relative age effect. The phenomenon in systems with an arbitrary cutoff date, for example, September 1st for school, January 1st for youth sports, children born immediately after the cutoff are nearly a year older than those born immediately before it. Okay, in sports, in elite youth hockey and soccer, there's a massive overrepresentation of players born in the first quarter of the selection year. Why? The older kids are physically larger and more coordinated. They get selected for elite teams, get better coaching, and the advantage compounds. Summer-born children in academics, the youngest in the class, are statistically more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD and receive lower standardized test scores in primary school compared to their autumn-born peers. This is not a biological trait. It is a maturity gap misdiagnosed as an ability gap. Okay. Okay, so is any of this stuff necessary to even include in here? And I don't think so. This is the closest we've gotten. But this isn't that important. And this isn't going to be relevant either. Personality and astrology, psychological effects. If you're looking for evidence that Leos are confident or Pisces are sensitive, statistics do not support it. Large-scale studies attempting to map the big 5 personality traits to birth months generally yield null results. So that would be our biggest... This would be our easiest way to find these types of correlations. The fishing problem. Occasionally a study will claim a significance. For example, summer babies are moodier. However, these studies often suffer from p-hacking or data dredging. If you test 12 months against 50 traits, random chance dictates you will find a few significant correlations that disappear when you try to replicate the study. There is exceptions. There is a minor controversial body of research suggesting summer babies might have slightly more hyperthymic temperaments. This is what we were talking about. However, this is likely a secondary effect of the circadian rhythm imprinting rather than anything related to star signs. Okay. Okay, if you see a statistical claim about season of birth, always ask, is this a biological effect, viruses/sunlight, or a social effect, school cutoff dates? So biological effects are real but subtle. They matter for public health, not individual destiny. So there's just that 1% more likelihood for an individual. Nope, not even a 1%. It's a 0.08 increase for the individual. which is not like pragmatically significant. So yeah, I don't think we're getting anything here. I don't think we're getting anything with season of birth or astrology. Okay, large scale sociological nulls, where the evidence breaks. While the Mars effect and season of birth provide empirical footholds, large scale data analysis largely demolishes the more granular claims of astrology, particularly regarding specific life outcomes and relationship compatibility. The most direct test of astrological determinism is the study of time twins, individuals born at the same time and place, often in the same hospital within minutes. According to natal astrology, these individuals share virtually identical charts and should therefore share similar personalities and destinies. The study, Dean and Kelly conducted a massive longitudinal analysis of over 2,000 time twins born in London. They tracked these individuals for decades, measuring personality traits, IQ, marital status, and profession. The correlation between time twins for these variables was effectively zero. There were no more alike than any two random strangers paired by chance. Yo, that's crazy. What? Wouldn't like genetics like have some effect here? Strangers compared to strangers? This invalidates the strong form of natal determinism. Even if the Mars effect suggests a nudge towards eminence, it is clearly not a blueprint for personality. Environmental factors, genetics, upbringing, class, completely overwhelm any astrological signal in the general population. Did they test for that? Did I miss that addition here? Oh no, these are just time twins. These are just individuals, strangers born time. Okay. My apologies. It's not actual twins. Actual twins, you would find more of a correlation. Okay, here we go. Need all the Daniel Gates. School year round, I'll die on that hill. That won't solve the the college experience was just too good that we're now all year round pilled. That won't solve the landlord problem. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I just thought I'd put that in there. All of that affects confidence too. Imagine you just have it in your head that you're a moron because you don't do as well as your classmates because you were born in July. So how would the all year round schooling help fix this issue? Would schooling not, like, would a year of schooling not start at the same time for everyone? Like, would you just start at 5 years or 3 years after you were born, or just whenever you're ready? Is it just kind of like a revolving door where people are entering and people are leaving when they reach certain levels of aptitude? If it's at a determined time of the year, then I would imagine you would have still an issue where you don't know if you should enter this year or the next year. Leave it to the social scientists to be calling children morons because they want to get published in a journal that no one will read. Did I hear that right? Did we decide that the season doesn't matter too much for academic performance? I think we did decide that. I think it pretty much said that it did come down to like social reasons such as the time of statistical significance high. However, we've got this relative age effect as like the primary driver rather than some sort of seasonal effect, or something intrinsic to the season. And I think SOB is specifically referring to actually the this already assumes we know it. It mentioned in here that it refers to the sunlight, I think, mainly, and not climate, which I guess makes sense because people have I mean, at least people now have air conditioning and whatnot in a lot of parts of the world. Maybe that last one you said before, aptitude. Okay, that people would start whenever, but then they would get out when, not when they have a certain aptitude, but once they've just gone in for, once they've done the requisite curriculum. Everyone's got the same curriculum, and you just kind of get in, you do it, and then you get out. People start at a certain age, I think. Okay, right? I mean, that'll be a lot easier once we start getting like more personalized educational systems via AI. I don't know how people are gonna, how quickly that's gonna be a thing, and if people are gonna like that at all. But I could see it being effective if it was done, appropriately, especially since you can have a literal teacher, whether it's like some AI voice, or if we're at the point where we can get a visual that can teach the students. And another thing that I think is so cool that AI could do is, even though you don't have the touch involved, if you had a screen and you had AI kids on the screen, and the kids are like, they're programmed to behave in a certain way for the sake of socializing a kid, like an actual kid, like that could be profound. Like, imagine a kid that doesn't have, isn't able to have friends via for some reason or another. And I know people are going to hate this because they would want that kid to just have the friends, but like, imagine if they're like, atypical in certain personality traits, or they're neurodivergent, and it's more difficult for them to find these relationships. Like, you can have the AI cater to the kids' specific needs in such a way that allows them to socialize during those imperative years of socialization. You don't get the touch, but you can get the interactions, which would be incredible. I think that would actually help a lot of people out. But it's also terrifying, and I know it's probably controversial, and people want humans. So forget I said anything. All right, basically, okay, sounds fair to me. To be honest, I do totally agree with that. We'll see how well that works. Has to be done really well, though. I think it can seriously help with things like maths, especially. A lot of it is mechanics, right? AI Diogenes. Man, we talked about this. I've been told this already. Diogenes? Diogenes? No, Diogenes? Oh, man. All right, imagine your kids get bullied by their AI classmate. Well, hopefully it would be written in that the kids would be like... I guess that's a problem, right? If the kids are too open-minded, and they are always like they have to give some sort of pushback for socialization to work, and that's a difficult thing to code, and it's a difficult thing to sell. Cue the Tyler the Creator tweet. If my child has Asperger's and can't socialize, I'm sitting with them and going through the stock market. That'd be good socialization. There's no way I'm letting RoboKid 3000 talk to them with all that open AI propaganda. I think the thing is, like, parents are supposed to socialize their kids up to a point, but then other kids are supposed to socialize kids after that point, or like it's supposed to be a large part of the socialization. So I don't think you can just socialize your kid all the way up through development. I think it's really important that they have other social encounters and dynamics with other kids. Okay. Okay, the time twins problem. That is a big problem. This invalidates the strong form of natal determinism, even if the Mars effect suggests a nudge toward eminence. Is clearly not a blueprint for personality. Okay. The Swedish registry analysis. Marriage and divorce. The most common practical application of astrology is synastry, the assessment of relationship compatibility. Researchers utilized the Swedish population registry to analyze the marriage and divorce records of millions of couples over a 33-year period. This dataset is orders of magnitude larger than any previous astrological study. So the methodology, they coded every couple's zodiac signs and tested the traditional astrological rules of compatibility. For example, trines are good, squares are bad, fire matches fire. The result: people do not marry compatible signs at rates higher than chance. There is no evidence of unconscious attraction based on zodiac pairing. Divorce risk: incompatible couples, for example, square aspects, are not at higher risk of divorce. The hazard ratios of divorce were flat across all zodiac combinations. Conclusion: the synastry component of astrology has zero empirical foundation. While an individual might have a summer temperament, this does not translate into a predictable systemic interaction with a winter temperament in the context of marriage. The complexity of human relationships defies the 12 by 12 matrix of the zodiac. Okay. The OkCupid data further supporting the Swedish findings. Data scientists at the data platform OkCupid analyzed the compatibility of hundreds of thousands of user interactions. They found no correlation between zodiac signs and conversation length, match percentage, or success of the interaction. Wow, conversation length they have, I guess, on file. A Virgo was just as likely to have a good conversation with a Gemini as with a Taurus. All right, the psychology of experience, why it feels true. If the large-scale predictive validity is near zero, why does astrology persist? The empirical foundation here shifts to psychology, the mechanisms that generate the illusion of accuracy. The Barnum effect. The most robust, proven psychological mechanism in this domain is the Barnum effect. In 1948, the psychologist Bertram Forer administered a personality test to his students and gave them a unique analysis. In reality, every student received the exact same text, compiled from random horoscope columns. The text included phrases like, "You have a great need for other people to like and admire you, and you have a tendency to be critical of yourself." I mean, to be fair, these are human traits, right? Is this not just... This should be stuff specifically for a certain month, unless this is something that's in a certain month. So, you have a tendency to be critical of yourself. All these I could see as just like human things, but students rated the accuracy of this description at 4.26 out of 5. This demonstrated that human cognition is biased to accept vague, universally applicable statements as specific and personal. This is the engine of daily horoscopes. Okay. That to me, that's not like that salient for anything, but empirical studies have shown that belief in astrology can actually create the evidence for it. Research on sun sign extroversion found that people who knew the traits of their sign actually scored higher on extroversion tests than those who did not know their sign's traits. Astrology functions as a social identity script. Once a person adopts the label, they unconsciously curate their behavior to fit the archetype. The empirical evidence of their personality is real, but it is a downstream effect of belief, not an upstream effect of the stars. This is pretty big. This is huge. You know what? I might want to put this stuff in the epilogue here. I don't know if this is what we're going to be talking about at all, but it would be kind of cool to have a little survey of like where we can and can't look for other things. But I'm going to just kind of copy these things. We'll find where this actually happens, and we'll do a better job of actually getting the research on this. But all right, algorithmic reinforcement. There we go. The co-star effect. In the modern era, astrology has moved to apps like CoStar and The Pattern. These apps utilize variable ratio schedules of reinforcement, the same psychological mechanism used in slot machines and social media feeds. Yikes. Mechanism. The app sends push notifications. Most are generic. Be careful with your words today. However, due to the sheer volume of notifications and the vagueness of the text, a user will inevitably receive a notification that perfectly matches their current emotional state. You are feeling misunderstood. Conditioning. This hit triggers a dopamine release. Because the hits are unpredictable, the user becomes conditioned to check the app compulsively, attributing the random hits to profound cosmic insight rather than statistical inevitability. Okay. we're going to be rich. No problem. They will go to Wall Street and talk with the others. It's so easy. RIP, arranged marriage, astrology app, unless 4 billion. Haha, true. Yep, it's a key tenet of what I'm trying to do here, to not be biased by profit. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And there's a lot of things that we're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen, such as hopefully give a lot away. So, all right, synthesis, the residue of evidence. The user asked for a comprehensive view of the empirical foundations based on the exhaustive review of the available evidence. From statistical anomalies to biological proxies, we can categorize the finding into a hierarchy of validity. The hierarchy of empirical validity. Table 2, empirical status of astrological claims. All right, the domain biological seasonality. Birth time affects temperament. The empirical status is valid proxy, via proxy, based on photoperiod or melatonin studies. The practical takeaway is high. Your birth season impacts your neurochemistry. Sun signs are a valid calendar for this biology. But it's, once again, it's not practical in the sense that you as an individual can learn when you were born and then apply that somehow to your own life, other than through what we just discussed, where you can use it as a way to frame your understanding, and that will actually affect your trajectory, provided that you believe in what you're doing. That's the issue. Like also with religion, it's like you have to buy in order for it to have that type of effect on your feeling of meaning in your life. So that's like kind of the paradox there. Eminence anomaly. Planets correlate with elite success. Valid. Anomalous. Mars effect. The Ertel's analysis. Practical takeaways low. Only relevant for elite athletes, professionals. The Mars effect is statistically robust but biologically unexplained. And once again, it's not that significant for an individual. All right, chart matching. Astrologers can match charts to profiles. Marginal and weak. Carlson reanalysis. Low to moderate. Practical takeaways. Skilled astrologers perform slightly better than chance, but the effect size is tiny. All right, then we got demographic fate. Time twins share destinies. Invalid. There's no practical takeaway. Astrology cannot predict specific life outcomes for individuals, including personality. Synastry. Signs predict marriage success. Invalid. No practical takeaway. No empirical basis for compatibility rules. The grounded rationale. The practical takeaway grounded in empirical standards is as follows. The signal is biological. The core feeling that people of different signs have behave differently is likely a correct observation of season of birth effects. The question, though, would be are those effects even large enough for people to kind of come to those conclusions, or are they already primed that way? A person born in August likely does have a more hyperthermic or hyperthymic temperament than a person born in July due to perinatal photoperiod exposure. The grounded rationale is to view the zodiac as a phenological calendar of human development rather than a celestial causal mechanism. All right, so I think this is just going to go off of the research, and I don't know if it's actually going to be accurate, given that it's suggesting something that I don't think it should suggest. The anomaly is real but rare. The Mars effect suggests that there may be a subtle interaction between planetary cycles and human biology that influences drive or eminence. This remains an open door in anomalistic studies, preventing a complete dismissal of the field. The complex rules of astrology appear to be elaborate psychological scaffolds. They do not hold up to large-scale data testing. Their value, if any, lies in their ability to act as a Barnum-enhanced Rorschach test, allowing individuals to project meaning and structure onto their lives. In conclusion, the empirical foundation of astrology is not a monolithic true or false. It is a composite structure. Its base is formed by the solid biology of seasonality. Its pillars are supported by the unexplained statistical strength of the Mars effect. But its elaborate superstructure, the daily horoscopes, the compatibility charts, the predictive certainty, is largely an architectural illusion of cognitive bias, unsupported by the data. The science of astrology, such as it is, ends at the biological boundary of the seasons and the statistical boundary of the extraordinary. All right. I think that was astrology day. I don't even think we need another day on that. I think we're kind of good. Kind of full. So this is going to be something. Maybe just organizing. We'll figure it out. We'll come up with something for tomorrow. And yeah. I think I'm going to call it there. So yeah, thanks for chilling. Thanks for getting the astrology education with me, and hopefully we all learned something. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.